Now, coming up, we have our special guest here, and he has been someone who has helped to popularize creators in the freedom movement. He has done for creators in the freedom movement what E.T. did for Reese's Pieces, made them very popular. And he is here tonight. He has taken a break from playing with his puppets. He's the freedom movement's Frank Oz. And maybe if we're lucky, we'll get to see a few of the new Teace's pieces. You can find him over on YouTube, over at T Snyder. You can find him at teace.ca. I would like to welcome back to his multiple times appearance on Grand Theft World, T Snyder. Teace, how you doing?
Thanks for the wonderful intro, Rich. I'm doing great. How about you?
Well, somebody's got to play with puppets out there. And, if you need someone that does voices, like, you know, I might know a few people who do voices for characters. And if we had scripts, like maybe we should be collaborating instead of just watching you from afar. What do you got? What do you got cooking over there?
Okay, so that's fair. Next time I'm on your calendar, I'll be sure to have you do it in like a Kermit voice or something so I can then dub that into whatever the next project is. But as far as what I've got going on,
He's got a Kermit voice.
Hey ho, this is Kermit the Frog reporting from Grand Theft World. I can also speak very much like Jordan Peterson at the same time.
Or
that's
Yoda.
the same picture. But yeah, no. What I've got going on is the next episode of Conspiracy Synergy, which I've been studying for years to be able to do. And it's sort of like a fairy tale version of the truth movement as reenacted through the rabbit puppet getting pulled out of his cartoon existence to then have to be mentored by me trying to get him to wake up normies. And it's a comedic romp. And that's what I'm working on full time. Part time, I've been putting together kind of like little bit mini kind of clip compositions of the various different figures that I met over the year that I was traveling. Today, I put one up on Scott. So it's a lot of different, and I don't think he's seen it yet. So
We're gonna premiere it. We're gonna premiere it here.
Yeah. Yeah, and
This
so
is how
it's
Scott's gonna see it.
in the last month I put up like 9 or 10 of those, and some of them are just the straight interviews, like the Sam Tripoli one that's like a 20-minute interview of him and Charlie sitting in the rain. Others are more highly edited. So yeah, it's just a way of using the content that I have to talk about things that are topical and very relevant to the movement at large. So that's what I've been up to.
I already cheated and picked a few of my favorites because
Okay.
I prepare sometimes for this show. I know it's hard to believe. It doesn't seem like that, but so let's talk about your creative process, right? Puppets. A couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago, I had texted you because they had that AI video, and I was working on some stuff, and you were working on some stuff, and we're like trying to perfect the buggy whip, and that new Model T goes driving by, but you can't get distracted by the Model T. You got to keep working on that buggy whip. So you have moved into animating characters with your hands to tell stories, hold people's attention, because that's one of the things Conspiracy Synergy regularly has to do is compete with all the other media out there and do something that holds their attention so you can transfer useful information to them if they so choose. So did you have a lot of puppet experience? Did you do sock puppets as a kid? What's the history on this puppeteering?
I've actually technically done puppeteering in a professional capacity for hire for a show called Felt Up, which was a local production done by an individual called Simon Glassman. And it was him recording the embarrassing stories of his friends to then reenact them with puppets. So I have actually technically been a puppeteer. But insofar as like utilizing it as a tool to reach the public, it's something that's just cheaper than animation. I can do on a green screen very quickly what by some other means would take a very long time. And it's engaging and animated. And you actually, if you do it like, if you meet some people who puppeteer, it's like robotic and painful, whereby others can actually kind of just instill this whimsical life. And that's a meaningful connection that you're able to make through an otherwise inanimate object.
How do you feel about having to compete with Iran's Lego propaganda at a time when you're trying to perfect puppets?
So, I mean, like the whole thing with AI is really interesting because it's given people the tools that they need in order to be able to create high budget things in very little time. The Iran Lego selection is kind of genius in that it's like a level that the public is able to hear. So they're able to build with Lego blocks and figure out that, wait a minute, things aren't as they seem on the box. And so I'm, in one sense, very appreciative of the creative potentials that AI offers. But at the same time, I think that it's so homogenized and static that it's become its own kind of like I'm sick of it already. I look at this stuff and I'm like, yeah, can we have something that isn't just a slow dolly one shot going from a name drop to a name drop over and over again in one way or another? It's lost its cinematic kind of luster. And so that's why if it becomes something that we work with more as like a tangible, not necessarily literally tangible, but something where it's like you had gloves to actually engage with it, it would be and eventually will be way more than it is right now. As it is right now, I don't have to compete with it. It's its own thing that's getting really lame pretty quick, but it's also brilliant while it's here. So it's a roller coaster ride. We'll take it when it goes up and when it comes down.
It goes to the Bill Hicks. It's like a ride. It's got ups and downs and goes all around. All right. So I think also it is paramount right now for human artists to continue, because art means from the arm, from the artifice, like you're creating through the hand, metaphorically, right? So to create things by hand, do you what's your puppet making process? Do you buy them pre-built? Like, what's the deal?
Yeah, no, like if I actually had a budget and like support and stuff, I'd be able to do everything in a Kubrick level of insanity that would take me off the rails even more than I already am. But as it is right now, I'm just buying stuff off of Amazon because it's like a white rabbit puppet. I don't have to like have it custom made in order to et cetera and so forth. So I'm working within a budget, but a lot of that is actually really interesting. Like it would have been kind of like cheesy and lame a few years ago, which is fine. It's still, as long as it connects emotionally, that's the most important thing. But now, because everything's just become this homogenized AI thing, it's like being cheesy and lame is like, oh my God, someone actually took the time to do something and like it looks cheesy and lame in a way that's like a whimsical kind of endearing quality to it. That's meaningful. So the thing that's just a few years ago, because of what it is, might have been looked down on, will now be appreciated all the more. It's a yeah, one of those.
Well, I think the rise of AI has brought with it a rise in appreciation for rough edges and authenticity.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I really agree with that. And it's like I don't know the exact research literature, but it's in essence they gave a group of people the access to AI systems within a limited margin of them trying to co-create things or create them on their own. And they demonstrated significantly enhanced ability as a result of that. And then they took their tools away and their creative faculties were diminished permanently thereafter. As in to say, it's almost like a chilling effect that it has on the arm that you use to then supplement the brush for something synthetic and parasitic. So it really makes you wonder how much we're going to get the best art out of the machine and how much the machine is going to take the best artist out of human beings.
Pretty deep. Scott, what are you thinking?
Well, the other thing too that on
Bot
that
stopping.
note, yeah. It's really interesting. So I'm learning more about how to like, advertise, like digital advertising, like, whatever. You guys probably hate me for this, but like Facebook ads and stuff like that. But it's like, so the kind of the rule, the way the kind of industry and the market's moving right now is big channels, everybody is using what's called UGC, user generated content. So if, let's say you have a something that you're selling, what is really working now is somebody with just their cell phone, just like this. Even though they're like a famous podcaster with a big studio, they're getting more traction just doing ads, like filming themselves talking to their phone like that, because people are so used to now seeing the highly polished stuff or the AI generated stuff, and they just swipe right by. So if you see somebody with a genuine phone, they're more likely to stop and engage with your ad. So it's really interesting how it's definitely swung back like that, because that data point tells you on a subconscious level. That data point is telling you what the data points are telling you. It's that it's swung back to where people are engaging more with authentic content and not, and they're just, their brains are shutting, not like the AI is making people's brains shut off literally.
I think that opens the doors of opportunity for freedom all over the place because it lowers the barrier to entry to the field of play. And I think TikTok has proven that, right? It's not just Ian Carroll who's like, hey, look, there's evidence. You know what I'm saying? Like that developed a style because they got trapped into the vertical video. If you don't know what a vertical video is, go to YouTube and type in vertical video syndrome. They actually, do you know what this video is that I'm talking about, Teace? This ties in so well. I didn't even plan it. Do you know that video? All right, it's called Vertical Video Syndrome. I think we should watch it together because it's done with puppets. It totally validates what like somebody here was thinking. Puppets are silly. They're great for instructive measures. They're great for getting people to think and things like that. So, do you have that up, Colby? Did you think to search that? Because I didn't think to search it till right now.
I don't.
Thought
I'm
maybe
sorry.
he
What was
like,
it again?
Vertical. It's on YouTube. It's called Vertical Video Syndrome. It's just short, but it makes a serious point that I think is going to help a lot of people who actually use their phone to film things.
Wait, so is it like supplementing Ian Carroll for a literal puppet rather than one who can do that in a political capacity to then be in front of a vertical video pointing at things above him?
His whole career is subject to vertical video syndrome. Like, okay. He broke the rule but became successful doing it anyway. But there is a position held by human beings whose eyes are sideways like this. And this puppet YouTube PSA that they made.
Discord.
Did you?
I think.
Did you find it?
Yeah, I've got it.
Yeah, I think that's it. Let's go ahead and roll that, and then we'll come back and we're gonna get Teace's comments on this and see if he thinks their puppetry is good or not.
This video didn't have to look this way. It could have been prevented. Say no to vertical videos.
Vertical videos happen when you hold your camera the wrong way. Your video will end up looking like crap.
There are more and more people addicted to making vertical videos every day. It's not crack or nothing, but it's still really bad. There are two different kinds of people who are afflicted with VVS. The first group treats the videos they shoot like pictures. They don't mean any harm. They just don't understand that while you can turn a picture, you can't really turn a video.
The other group is people who don't give a
Vertical video syndrome is dangerous. Motion pictures have always been horizontal. Televisions are horizontal. Computer screens are horizontal. People's eyes are horizontal. We aren't built to watch vertical videos. I love vertical videos!
Nobody cares about you!
If this problem's left unchecked, YouTube will begin showing 4 videos at once, just to save bandwidth.
Letterboxed vertical videos would be the size of a postage stamp.
And it will spread everywhere. Movie screens have always been horizontal. If vertical videos become accepted, movie theaters will have to be tall and skinny.
And all the movie theaters would have to get torn down and rebuilt. And by the time they were rebuilt, Mina Coolitz would be old and ugly.
And birds will crash into them and die.
And we will all get stiff necks from looking up.
And no one will sit in the front row ever again.
And George Lucas will re-release Star Wars again! The skinny edition!
I was never really able to tell the story that I wanted to tell. This is a great chance for me to experiment with a new technology.
You're a jerk.
Every time a mobile device is used to record video, the temptation is there. Just say no. Say no to George Lucas. Say no to old Mila Kunis. Say no to vertical videos.
And if you see someone doing it, say, "You're not shooting that right, dummy!"
And your friends, they all come crawling, slap you on the back and say,
All right, so that's not news. That's history. That's 13 years ago. Teace, is that the first time you've ever seen such thing?
Yeah, that's the first time I've seen that.
Pretty good.
How's their puppeteering?
I think they did a pretty good job. Like they communicated. It was cinematically well composed, at least. You know, as far as the puppeteering, it was mostly just characters that well crafted for the voices that accompanied them. There wasn't like, I don't know, character development or something. But yeah, you wouldn't expect it from something that short. Good job all around.
They brought the guy with the vertical eyes in out of nowhere. There was no character arc for that guy at all. So I agree. It was kind of pieced together shoddily. But
No, that one was good
tool.
because they built up the technology, and then he was just an extent. He's like the black ooze that secreted out of the narrative that they built. Yeah.
So you think he evolved? He went.
Yeah.
If we went to the prequel, you would see like his eyes like diagonal. Probably if you go to the prequel, his eyes were horizontal.
No, dude. The prequel is the X-File movies when that kid falls into the ground and then the black ooze starts to come out of his eyes, and then he's the one who creates the first vertical video. That's the prequel.
All right, so at least everyone has a tool. If there's a vertical video filmer and you're trying to get something done and you got to explain it to them, they already made a tool. Just use the tool. Puppets always do the job. Severely educational. And yeah, now that's in the record. I'm glad that's in the, we've got thousands of hours of very serious historical clips, but I think that might be one of the most important ones we've ever aired on this show. We did it because of you, Teace.
Okay. I
learned it from you. All right.
Yeah.
It's good. It's good, the wisdom that goes around. Now, I want to feature a couple of Teace's pieces. I also had some thought on that branding. I think it's PEACE apostrophe S instead of the PIECES. Teace's pieces, because it's about peace. That'd be good, strong branding. And people like to play with the phonics these days. So I'm just putting it out there. And can we watch one of the Teace's pieces right now and get your commentary and can we ask some questions about how it was produced and whatnot? And
yeah, no, I mean, if you want to use it as like a back and forth for insights for people who are developing the skill sets and want to take it on themselves, however you want to approach it. And there's about 9 or 10 of them that I've put up in the last month. Some of them are really simple. Some of them are very complex. So it's up to you what you want to roll.
This is the complex meets complex. This is Poikinen and Ryan from T Lab. So I just slid that to Colby, and I really enjoyed this one because, people see these characters on screen and treat them like they're the internet personality person, but you break down those walls and you can see these as individual human beings whose paths cross in useful ways and cool things pop off, and people keeping it real. And I think that's really good, healthy, nutritious type of supplement that people aren't getting on the regular on the internet, especially not in the Twitter world, right? You can't judge Ryan by his tweets because he's more than that. He's responsible for what he tweets, but he's so much more than that. They all are. Like, there wasn't anything of Ryan doing a chef thing in there, right? But just them jamming out, having a good time. Those little vignettes being captured at this point in history, early in the 21st century, when things started to get a little, as Radowski would say, tumultuous. So let's go to it. This is how long? Let's see, 4 minutes. It's 4 minutes. So we'll come back and comment. This is Steve Poikinen and Ryan Christian from The Last American Vagabond. Let's go to Teace's Pieces number 1.
Man, I'm just happy to be here at all. This is crazy. Go first. I was gonna say, man, the state is an illegitimate entity that only exists to perpetuate itself.
Oh, that's a better way. That's even more broad.
Does so through theft, extortion, and violence.
Government.
Yeah.
That's even too broad for some people, I would argue.
It doesn't matter what state. Sorry, commies.
Exactly. Government. That's the thing. It's like whether it's democracy or communism, or it's a power structure that consolidates power over time to control your life every fucking time. Look back through history.
And specifically, technocracy is a 100-year-long agenda that's, specifically that. It goes back, centuries or what, but specifically like the technate.
Yeah, right.
Which includes Greenland all the way down to the Panama Canal.
What they just put out there as the future plan, right?
Yeah, the North American Union, and now perhaps voluntarily becoming a part of the British Commonwealth. Whenever you start to take yourself too seriously, you fucked up. And whenever you start to believe that whatever it is you think you're up against is going to win, that's when they're going to win, which is retarded, so don't do that.
So we were just talking yesterday. Was that, wait.
Well, okay. Let me brag on Ryan. Because there aren't too terribly many people in the independent media space that are nightmarishly objective. And Ryan is the most nightmarishly objective person I know. He goes above and beyond to make sure that there's evidence to support what his gut instinct is, and he'll even like hold off on his gut instinct for a frustratingly long amount of time until evidence corroborates it. And that's rare. That's an amazing characteristic. I don't have that. I don't. I see something, it smells weird, I'm like, oh hey, that smells weird. What are you doing? Stop eating grass. Come here. Dork. But it's truly been like an immense privilege to get to know Ryan, to be a legitimate friend, to like trust this guy, and then also to be a part of the Independent Media Alliance that he co-founded with Whitney Webb and Derek Brose. And it includes some of the heavier hitters in the entire space and people who didn't fall for the bullshit no matter what the bullshit was. Pick a bullshit. They didn't fall for it. So, yeah, man. I really am happy to be here at all. I really am.
All right, Teace. You talked about technocracy. Technocracy is an idea that's been going on a long time. Part of the idea seed for technocracy was this thing called utopian socialism. Do you know anything about that?
It sounds like a non-existent concept that they tried to make a reality to lure us into a death cult.
Yeah, it's like two of those things put together, like utopians and socialists. It's like that thing squared. Anyway, it's interesting that the technocracy movement that we're so aware of today, right? The global technate that was just being talked about. It's interesting because there's a guy in 1862 who wrote this book called Rome and Jerusalem, The Last Nationalist Question. Now, Moses Hess is the father of utopian socialism, and he's also an influencer of the Tiny Mustache Man, because National Socialism, Moses Hess is from Germany. He came up with the seed idea that is later embraced by a political party. But the whole purpose of this was to create a state of Israel in the Ottoman Turk area of Palestine from the time of our Civil War in America. There's a much longer narrative arc. So utopian socialism playing into technocracy as a means to take over the world, to create artificial forms of government, to kind of fuse all the historical cults into one and have a new world order, as a lot of people have said over the years. Technocracy and their ability to use technology against us, I think, is it's like their game plan. It's like their favorite play to run. They use it all the time. They surveil us, they restrict us and digital ID us and try to track our currency through that, right? But you're doing things in the analog world that are captured digitally and shared on the internet. So you're a case of the artists using the technology to liberate minds while these people are so busy trying to... Utopia means not here, nowhere, doesn't exist. So for people to want things that don't exist, that can't exist because of the nature of their ideas in this reality, I think that's kind of antithetical to nature itself. But opine as you will on the juxtaposition of using art to liberate people using technology versus people who are very not arty. They're looking to cause problems, not solve problems with their work.
There's a lot there. I could go all kinds of directions.
7-hour show. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I mean, you can think of the kind of like Machiavellian Malthusian art of destruction as something in and of itself. You know, you can allude to nature and nurture as the positive dynamic and nature and torture as the inverse of that. So there is an art to sickness, and they are the greatest culmination of the passing of that sickness intergenerationally, and it refines itself over time. So they aren't necessarily very good at being creative, but they are extraordinary at being destructive. And what ultimately kind of like comes to bear after that is the order out of chaos thing. They aren't necessarily the ones who create the order, or at least this time I don't think they will be. That seems to be like the ambition via technocracy to lure us as chattel into digital concentration camps that are our apartments, and then via the 15-minute city kind of rather than what is it? The obsolescence that happens.
Yeah, the premature obsolescence.
Yeah. So it's like, think of like Planned Parenthood. This is planned obsolescence. And it's planned obsolescence for everyone who doesn't voluntarily become a plug for the system that they're trying to insert into our rear end. And in so doing, strip us of any semblance of autonomy or freedom. And so the idea of using the tools that they have created to enslave us to try and break the chains, that is a conversation that had come up in the time that I was spending with Passio. And he was basically just, in a vocal way, speaking about it as absurd to try and get rid of the very tools that you need to reach the most people at this pivotal moment in time. And
Has
I would
anyone animated Passio stuff with Legos yet? I think that could be a thing that could be done.
Yeah, so that's definitely a thing that would be especially epic. I don't know if I'm going to be the guy to do it, but I will end up editing about a 40-minute breakdown that he did of tarot as juxtaposed with the Kabbalah and its various different insights. But that'll take me about a week to do that one. That's not up yet. I'll have to pontificate on the notion of turning him into a Lego character.
Get with Iran, dude. Iran's got you covered, dude.
Yeah, there you go. We'll just be like, hey, have you guys heard of Passio? You might want to just like lean into that to be anti-government on this one.
I'll hit up my contacts in Iran. I got some Iranian contacts, dude. I've been on Press TV. Like, what's
You've been on presstv.ir. You're one of those people like Ray McGovern.
Yeah.
I remember back when they had Russia, what was the RTV? What was it called?
RT, Russia Today, yeah, RT.
Russia Today. And I was like, that's state-sponsored Russian media being shown in our country. And then I picked up on the vibe. You are allowed to say anything on that show as long as you're not talking smack on Putin. That's basically what it was. They would give you a platform. If you were an American dissident, that's generally who they got on the show. CIA whistleblower Ray McGovern, those types of people had platforms. I'm sure Sean Stone, Benny, there's a whole bunch of people that were on that platform. Lee Camp had a show on there. And yeah, it's interesting how some propaganda is allowed and then not allowed. Some propaganda is allowed all the time, full time for like the past 80 years. But what is your optimism on being able to continue to produce and enlighten the crowd through conspiracy synergy? Have you had a growing following? Have you noticed like a fall off over time? Do you have to like adapt and pivot your creativity? What's been the journey so far?
So it's one of those things where I'm still very hopeful for its evergreen traction and what it will bring to bear, because it connects to some of the best content creators out there. For anyone who hasn't seen the first episode of Conspiracy Synergy, it's literally just like an introduction for our friends and family who have never heard of like Richard Grove or James Corbett or Mark Passio or anything like that. And so I do brief little encapsulative kind of snippets that tell their story to then pave the way for an introduction to a completely different framing of what journalism is, which is decentralized, open source journalism that isn't corporately funded and owned by oligarchies. And that's what this conversation is. Until you know that this conversation exists, you might have your trepidations about entering in. And so I've created a kind of like handrail accompaniment out of Plato's cave, as it were. And that hasn't necessarily picked up traction in the mainstream because the mainstream, as we all know, has been saturated with controlled opposition, in essence, like the fake alternative media, the Candace Owens sort of people. And that then creates this vortex that slows the otherwise influx of people that would be in the know. And so it's deleterious to the well-being of everyone because they get caught up in these cul-de-sacs that slowly poison them. And more than that, zap them of their energy. You want the most black-pilled people. It's the ones who keep falling for establishment figures. You want the people who understand that there's a pill that comes after the black pill called the gold pill, which is, even though it's really dark, you still do what you can to be the light and to make it better. Well, that's when you come to these people. That's when you come to Grand Theft World and all of the different people who have been here and spoken here, because that's a ticket, a golden one, to be able to make better of the dark times that we find ourselves in. And so it's one of those things where I am very much hopeful for the evergreen capacity of the show and the content that I've created and continue to create on those notes, because it's going to be written in history unless the same technocratic occultists use their technology to try and write history for us again. But hopefully this time we'll score a win.
I like the Wonka bar metaphor, whether that was intentional or not. And also the description is, it's like there's people doing things to take away your freedom. They created mainstream media. Most people have only heard the position of the people who are doing it to you, instead of like the people who are like discovering it's being done and who's doing it and where they're doing it, how they're doing it, all these things, right? So what you indicated was like there's that mainstream media created by the people who do the things, and then there's this swirl of like people who get millions and millions of views on everything they ever do on the internet, and that kind of catches people who fall out of the official narrative and they think they're in the know, but they never really get down to the point where you can get to like a James Corbett's work and watch his documentaries, right? Or dig deep into a show like this or watch Conspiracy Synergy. So Conspiracy Synergy is like the bridge between those worlds.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I'm going to continue to do the breadcrumb buildup to more profound cultural reveals as we simultaneously go through the aperture of the species at large, becoming more inclined to actually want to shake the constraints of the cage that they were born in to keep them from cradle to grave. And so it's a really interesting shifting of the time. And I've asked you before on AM Wake Up kind of your personal experience of going through the awakening process, and your response was so much weirder than I ever thought, and that's basically been my experience as well. But in your kind of like take of like the last few years, like post lockdowns, it's a totally different environment conversationally, in that you can at least say these things without getting stabbed or threatened, whereby back in the days of 9/11, it was a completely different paradigm. So that's ongoing evolution of public aperture to that which was previously so far out there that it was impossible.
The Overton window is sliding more rapidly than ever. But it slid in it kind of goes in a circle. So it's gone to a point where now things that were very taboo to talk about and you would have got banned deep 20 years ago, they're all being openly talked about right now all over the place on the internet. So I think it's a very interesting time. And I think it's also an interesting time to add more information to the public domain on such things while it's popular to talk about such things. Because they're trying to restrict all these things that are being talked about because they're being talked about.
Oh yeah, no, like so much. And as the video that you had previously, the animation that went along with it, the idea that we, the many, are supposed to create the fish that scares the few or the psychopaths away so that they aren't so inclined anymore. That's very true. What I found in essence is that a lot of people that we might have hoped to reach, they're not actually reachable, but they are teachable.
Yeah, they're not home.
Yeah. But what you can do is set the example that they will then follow. So when you look at it that way, the failing isn't actually with other people or with the globalists. The failing is with us. We haven't created the alternative systems, or if we have, we haven't reached it out to the correct people to then extend it outward so that it becomes more available to everyone. So when you think of it as less finger pointing of blame and more, okay, well, what can I do and what can I take upon myself? Not to a point where you break yourself down or burn out, but in a synergistic, cooperative manner, go about co-creating the alternatives, then you don't have to wake people up anymore. You've already given them the solution, and you don't have to explain the problem. Until we reach that point, we are going to be inculcated in that same vortex circle of problematic, like that, these kind of people that like they're not going to have the direction to get out of. They're going to keep swimming in that school of fish. So it's one of those things where there's a lot of hope there as long as you find the courage to be that hope yourself. The tragedy and hope side of thing, I've learned from Richard my entire life, not my entire life obviously, but like my adult life, and that's been a profound and meaningful contribution to what I am then able to pick up and help pass along to others so that they can do so too. That's the road that we're in. It's a passing, a sharing, and a proliferation of things until we reach a phase shift that then sees us enter a hopefully different state of being that isn't one that was created in the nature and torture model that these people are so fond of.
My next question depends on an allusion. I will allude to something that happened before you were born as far as pop culture. So I'm going to state it like this. When I was a kid, there was a show called Sha Na Na. And it was like a greaser, biker, 50s type of thing for boomers. And they'd have some music, and there was a character on there. His name's Donnie, and he was like a minor character, but he was like a dumb dude, right? And then there was one episode, he did something smart, and the point was, you have to be really smart to play the dumb character on a show. And I thought that was very powerful. So now this ties into my question for you. As a person of beyond PhD comprehension, how do you distill it down to like fifth grade, kindergarten, puppetry type of language? Because I think that is one of the things that takes the most intelligence in the game of being human, is to take complex ideas and simplify them. And to, Richard Feynman didn't use puppets when he was teaching these big ideas, but you do have that aptitude and talent, and you're a filmmaker, so you can film the whole thing. So it's way further than even Feynman had gone. So like, do you have a process for distilling down wisdom to encapsulate it in such healthy little packages?
Yeah, so it's a completely different modality of thought altogether. You're not thinking, you're feeling. It's heart-based intelligence by which you're operating through nonlinear time in the gradual culmination both of yourself and so too that which you reach towards. So it's something that isn't there until you reach it, and you become more aware of who you are and what it is as you reach towards it. It isn't something that you know completely already, and even if you do, like some artists will be able to do this, they can visualize it in their own mind and then they'll just create what's in their own mind. But what you can also find is that in the process of drawing it, you might get more inspiration that you draw from what you're already able to see before you. And that's sort of what I do in the process of what I experience. I'll give you a real life example, and this also emerges via Synchromysticism. So that's like when I was doing the documentary on Charlie Robinson, the macroaggressions one, there was a mural in between the blowback gallery and the baseball like diamonds. There were like 8 or 10 of them or something in a conglomerate, and there was this mural of a dude swinging a baseball bat surrounded by concrete swirls, but the concrete swirls look just like an octopus. And Charlie's story is about, he comes from a baseball background and he wrote the book Octopus of a Global Control. So that's an example of a synchromistic emergence of something that I as an artist can recognize the metaphorical value of. When you see everything around you as the story that is told through existence itself, then you can kind of pick the seams of the dream to then address something with a different kind of fashion more suited to the time.
It also makes it seem like what you're doing at that time and place seems like the right thing to be doing at that time and place when it lines up like that.
Yeah.
It's like the universe winking back at you.
Yeah.
Like, good job, you made it this far, but we're not done giving you shit yet, however it works.
Oh yeah, if it's not winking back at you, it's flicking you in the nuts. It's always one or the other.
Right after you set up that shot, like it started raining or the battery goes dead or his mic didn't work, or, just when you think you got the thing, it's going to be like, whoop. So you have to like keep it real and always be vigilant in those situations.
Well, I learned from this great guy, Richard Grove, not to leave a bunch of gear in a car. So yeah, I steered clear of some of those disaster scenarios.
I'm so cognizant of that too now. I'm like, I'm not gonna load anything even in my driveway until ready to drive out the door.
Fortunately, the stuff that got taken, though expensive, in some cases irreplaceable, it was the stuff that we didn't need to film William Bloom. So I did have like my A stuff with me, but my B stuff is still worth a lot of stuff that was in the truck. And my buddy John Massaria, actually, he was listening to the show a couple weeks ago. We were talking about a clip, and he was trying to hook me up with the clip that we couldn't find during the show. So I still have to follow up on that. Teace, in this milieu of trying to break on through to the other side, you obviously realize at your point in your journey that you can lead a person to knowledge, but you can't make them think. And that's not your audience. The people who aren't willing to engage and ask some questions and find out some new stuff, if they think they already know everything and they're like, what is this puppet stuff? Like, that's just them cutting themselves off from opportunity of learning. That's not your audience. So how do you get your message in front of the people who actually would embrace it, instead of people saying, look, I got to watch 8 hours of football on Sunday. I don't have time for no conspiracy synergy.
So creativity is more powerful than just about anything. And you can think of a simple example of that: creating life. Wow, more powerful than anything. The future depends on it. We all utterly depend on creativity. So there are a couple of quotes of myself that can touch on important insights. One being that stating the obvious can enlighten the oblivious. So sometimes it doesn't seem like it's important to state the obvious. Yeah, well, maybe it's important for the oblivious. The other one is that a turn of phrase can upend a concept. So if you're creative with the stating of the obvious, you can upturn a concept that everyone else used to define their entire existence. So be creative, be playful. The book that I wrote with my video game researching and dream researching mother is called Play Reality: How Video Games Are Changing Everything. I grew up in an environment where I was surrounded by psychologists, myself playing video games, only to later co-author a nonfiction book talking about the various different influences that play has on us in our evolution, and so too that simulated play environment has had on our evolution as well, outside of the sphere of what is conventionally discussed. So it's one of those things where when you come back to the play dynamic and the creative dynamic, you're able to unlock within the viewer, in the very depths of their being, in their quintessence, that which precedes conscious awareness and thought, a side of themselves that they just want to express. That's where that spontaneous laughter or glee will come from. And so I use weed to find that part of me. That helps, but it's one of those things where if you use it too much, eventually you just kind of plunge yourself into the darkness. So it's a calibrative back and forth dance with what you have at your disposal, what you're trying to accomplish, being honest with yourself. It's really, really important. Being honest about the feedback that you get, rather than just trying to downplay it or pretend that, oh, they said it was great, that means it's great. Does it though? Because I mean, a lot of the time people will only give you positive feedback. So it's a lot about learning from everything and everyone, trying to be as honest as you can, and remembering that in the midst of all of that, it's, for some people, it's just going to take more time. And so that's where patience comes in as the final ingredient.
Patience. And you can always ask them for your, tell me, I just made this thing. Tell me your least favorite part. You gather everyone's least favorite part and then you make it better like that. If you want to, as an artist, you don't have to. I want to ask you real quick. Let me bring my work to my podcast. Friday night, welcoming new AUTONOMY students. We're doing lecture 1 in the Q&A afterwards. Indications that some of the kids are getting too much screen time, and this is coming from parents, and they have questions, and I was providing resources. But since you just spoke to that, my immediate observation is this. Screen time is it's the default unless you know something better to do. So if you don't organize some ideas of more interesting things to do than watching the next thing, you're going to get sucked in. Someone like Teace has a number of skills, so he can think of a cool idea, and then he either knows how to do 4 out of 5 things and he has to learn one thing, or he'll just learn all the things because he can. So screens have a purpose. When we use them for our betterment, I think that's good. When we are losing our time and not able to be active in this world, that's like the downside. And kids being addicted and not being able to go without screen time is not a good thing, because nature's out there and it needs to be dealt with. We're not always going to be in a terrarium situation. So having had gaming experience, I wasn't into gaming. What tips or tricks could you provide to parents who might have, or even people listening who have such issues?
Okay, well, Alex, you grab the book. Assuming it's up there. I threw it somewhere else. Whatever. I'm not well.
That's the best chair cover I've seen, dude. Is that a cover or is that a chair?
It's a cover. It's the Van Gogh thing. It's a motif from the film that I made, Hold Me. But anyway, the book is called Play Reality: How Video Games Are Changing Everything. It's broken down in like less than 100 pages. If you go to teace.ca, I have because my deal is I put all of my work up for free. So if you want to read this and get just like a quick encapsulative, you can read it in half a day and you're good to understand. It was written like over a decade ago, but it's still relevant and on point because we were accurate about the implications of what was being shown then, and it's played out and is still true today. So you can look at via that book and wow. Okay. So it is really affecting everything, video game play. The largest growing demographic of video game players are actually middle-aged women. That's typically in the more simple games that they're playing. You can look at the influence and effect on dreams of people, specifically combating their nightmares. So that would be something where, like, if a soldier is suffering from PTSD or something and he played a game like Call of Duty, that would then give him the faculties in order to internalize, not necessarily subconsciously, but through the practiced habituation of active engagement with the system to practice fighting back. Okay, so once you're in a similar dream-like environment, which is paralleled with video games, you can fight back against your nightmares. So that's a really interesting thing that video games provide people, the impetus to fight back against that which fears us most. Simultaneously, you can also use it as kind of a load for reincarnation. So you're going through different cycles over and over and over again. So there's a lot going on in a lot of different aspects of life. If you look at resilience that you can develop in an individual, it erodes beyond 4 hours a day. So if you're looking at someone who's like beyond 4 hours of playtime in an immersive video game, and immersive doesn't even have to be sophisticated. If you're deeply like engaged in like Tetris or something, that's immersion. So it's one of those things where beyond 4 hours, it erodes resilience, whereby about 1 to 2 hours is peak and optimized resilience. So there are windows of feedback and different demographics that will get gains or are hurt by them. You can look at one of the things that was previously touched on with video games is the idea of aggression, that they would be blamed for things like Columbine, stuff like that. But that was just completely baseless. And so it's one of those things where that's more to do with socioeconomic status and whether or not the government wants to use you as a psyop and other things like that. So the conventional way in which we have come to think of video games is in the fledgling development of them as they have been created by systems designed to entrap and entrain us. Whereby if we actually were to liberate the system engagements in order to utilize them for something that is towards our benefit, then it's like screen time wouldn't be the point anymore, because all the video game would do would prepare you for purpose and responsibility in the real world. It would be a system to facilitate and augment reality rather than something that sucks you out of reality. So the question also poses where we're at in the development of the medium. It's kind of like right now, it's this funky little venomous gecko that got irradiated and it's en route to becoming Godzilla. Is that going to be the thing that defeats technocracy, or is it going to be the thing that sees it become an inevitability? I don't know. But that's up to us, and that's up to you.
Gojira.
Yep.
It's fascinating. It's fascinating. The whole history of how these little things that they irradiate with just a little power then mutate into these other things that just so happen to suit their needs in their long-term agenda of taking away our freedom. It's not like they were like, let's dumb down education, create schooling, and then it backfired. It didn't backfire. It worked perfectly. It worked so perfectly that even when you try to tell people they got dumbed down by a system that is not your friend, they're like, what are you talking about? You're not a teacher. You give me a gold star. I need a hall pass. Can I have permission to vote for someone to rule over me for the rest? There's a whole bunch of nonsense that people have a chance they could throw out, but they have to kind of put themselves in neutral and take themselves out of the assumptive thinking, the assumption that they know what is going on without having had to do any research, experience, introspection, or observation. It's antithetical to reality. What do you got?
Finding the book, and I did find it. Okay. And you're right. It is like this. The Rockefeller medicine men, the definition of healthy is, are they still able to work? That's of reading that book. That was the one that stood out to me most. It's like, wow, that's
they're not dead.
Yeah. It's like gulag levels of depravity for what they expect of people and their workaholic way of approaching just being another brick in the wall. And it's brutal. And they use all of these different remarkably sophisticated dynamics in order to corral us to a point of, I've described it as kind of just like the tourniquet that they put on us until eventually you don't even know that your arm exists. And then if you see someone using an arm, you're like, kill that thing. It's like, what?
Well, that's what AI does. Like your arm is like your brain. It's turning it off. And then someone using their creativity is going to be hated because they're not, they're not replicating the Borg.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it. That's it exactly. This is the book. It's Play Reality, How Video Games Are Changing Everything. Jane Gackenbach, PhD, and T Snyder, FTW, for the win. It's a joke about credentials. So, yeah, it's one of those things where you want a really quick introduction to this, and you can read it for free if you want. I do value for value with all of my work. It is literally just purpose-oriented, responsibility-based transmutation of the current state in order to do well by the aggregate of the species overall. And so, for anyone who hasn't looked at that through an artistic lens, check it out. That's what it's about.
Watch this, Scott. I'm the AI Trump doctor, and I'm going to treat Teace's aversion to marketing. Watch how this is done. So
it's not going to work. It's not going to work. Go ahead.
No, good. Yeah. I want you to have that opinion. So Teace, people go to teace.ca and they can download that book for free, right?
Yeah, the PNG, you can get it there. Yeah.
All right. Let's say at some point you come across some really good information that ties in to that book. And you think, gee, I would really love to share this information that ties into that book with the people who came to my site over the years and downloaded that book, but I wasn't thoughtful enough to get their email in case I ever needed to communicate with them in a meaningful way ever again, with them having a full free will ability to unsubscribe at any time. So you've closed the doors to opportunity where you could help people further. I think that's very selfish of you. And I would like to help rectify that for you.
Okay, thanks for the insult. I appreciate the selfishness of myself. I will be more selfish now. Tell me more.
I'm saying you can still give value for value, have everyone download everything for free. But if they were to provide their email to you in that transaction, then when you have more resources in this area, you are able to share. Like autonomy wouldn't exist if I didn't have a list of people who were interested in the critical thinking trifecta. But when you have a list of thousands of people interested in critical thinking, and then you offer something later, I didn't have autonomy in 2013 when I created that lead magnet, a way of transacting value for value. I give them something valuable that schooling denied them, and they give me something that's throwaway. They can create email addresses on the fly. So I take the risk in the transaction, but if I hadn't taken those risks in the transaction, there would be a lot of people fatigued from the absence of freedom in their life.
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely. So have you ever read The Culture Code as far as a buffer for networking and the idea of collisions?
I have not.
Okay. It's mainstream publication. I think it's one of bestsellers, whatever. But an example they gave was of online sneaker producer, and they ended up building one of their I don't remember what the technical specs of the building was, main facility, something like that. We'll just call it that. And it was built in a way in which it encouraged the most spontaneous just engagements of human beings with one another at all times. Because without that mesh network, your innovation sits on a shelf. So yeah, it is a very important and significant thing to offer people, is the idea to stay up to date and to be privy to the fruits of someone's labor who is good for the goods.
Do you publish on Substack? That'd be an
no.
easy place to do the thing. You could put, do you have a digital version of that book?
Yeah, I do. I mean,
people who subscribe to your Substack and put their email in could get the digital version of that book. You could build 30, 50, 100,000 people in that audience. And when you are able to multiply how many people you can help with digital products, that allows you to do more puppet art, dude.
Bro,
and remain independent.
No, you're so spot on. And it's it's one of those things where my investment has always been fully on the creative end to such an extent where it has shortcutted the degree to which I then gain traction in a larger, basically identity politic, cult of personality. I hate that shit, man.
I'm wearing too many hats corrupts the artist, man. So you got to delegate.
Right. No, you're like, so you're correct about that. I guess it's just like, I've always had this intuitive feeling like you're just supposed to create it until it's so fucking good that people want to share it with their family. They want to like go and force it on their family. They're like, watch this right now, that kind of thing. And until you get to that point, it's like marketing is almost telling yourself that you're there already. And so it's one of those things where you're correct in every single way, but I've approached it in the way that I have because it's almost like this slow form progression of my own ability and creations to then lend that to a particular culmination of time.
I got the metaphor.
What?
I just mixed it. You have the world's biggest pumpkin, but you will not take it to market and show it at the fair for the, you know what I'm saying? It's like you're denying people the joy of seeing the biggest pumpkin, bro. Marketing is simply taking your offer to market. I'm saying your work is so good, it needs to find its way in front of more people. And instead of hoping and wishing other people to do that thing, you can do that as an artist more intentionally. Many artists these days are learning how to do such things. Look at Arthur Kwan Lee leveraging his Substack every week, getting people to sign up by bleeping out the videos on YouTube. Very effective tactic. If it's all beep, beep, beep on YouTube, I go to Substack right away. And so, like, yeah, that's a effective way to build your audience right there. And then you have consistent support to remain independent. I'm always concerned for my colleagues that they're not going to get sucked under by the undertow and end up driving for Amazon. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
I'd end up a homeless prophet, but go ahead, Scott. What's up?
I was just saying, it's funny. Teace, you and I, we've had like conversations like this. Well, bro, what about this? Well, what about this? You're like, nah, dude, not doing it. In fact, like last week I texted him and I'm like, bro, I need to hire an editor. Like, what's up? Like, you're the best editor in the world. I need help editing Instagram.
If he was available, I would have already hired him. So.
I gave you better advice, Scott. You did better advice I gave you.
You did give me some good advice, which is great. I'm going to be reaching out. But this is so funny because it's like, I've had this conversation. But, part of the problem I've had and part of, where I ran into a lot of this, and this is just like a broad brush, but it's like I've found that, like, unfortunately, like the people that we're making content for, they don't like to support work, dude. They're broke conspiracy theorists, okay? They don't support shit. They won't even.
No, that's not true. See, that's not true. Those people listen to the podcast, but that is not who I'm creating for. I create for people like Jeff Medine, who created the Blowback Gallery and holds the Truth Art Conference every year. He's listened to my work since, I don't know, like the early 2000s back in the day. So influencing other influencers and creators to grow in the right direction, remain independent, be strong on their own, not be on the YouTube tit all the time. That's who the audience is. Other people who watch for free, I don't know how you could claim to be a participant unless you're a member and go to town hall and do those things. So it's a small group of people, always has been, that makes the wheels go around and actually take action to support things.
I'm so sick of conspiracy theorists, dude. I'm just like, I'm done. I'm literally going to go get vaccinated and go get a job at Amazon. Like, that's it.
Go blend in with the herd, man. There you go. Paint yourself normie, gray man. Pretend like you don't know any of this and try to operate every day.
I know. It's crazy. There's no going back. That's my whole message has just been like, we can't stop it just being a conspiracy theorist. We have to then take it to the next level. But anyway, there's no blue pills. There's no blue pills, Mark. Don't worry.
Cypher loved the steak. That's all. He was just a big steak fan.
Although it is kind of interesting. I am doing very normie things these days. It's kind of funny.
It's okay. Normie's not a pejorative. It's a starting point for education yet to take place on your own. It just means you've been schooled.
It gives me an unfair advantage, I think, coming into like the business world and starting a business, like of this degree of what I'm trying to do, like, but having this knowledge of the world and stuff. It's like, okay.
It's just practice. If I went to baseball camp all summer and then you just picked it up in September and we play baseball together, it's like I had practice. I understand the rules. I challenged myself with players who were more advanced. And then you go play with people that don't know how to play. That's going on in the world all the time. In politics, in religion, in socioeconomic situations. So caveat emptor, intellectual self-defense, be a smart consumer with what you put between your ears and what you use with the voting with your dollars. And then you can start to educate yourself step by step to make the world a better place. And eventually, if you hold yourself to a high enough standard, you can do what Teace does for a living and pursue your creativity and do that. Like burning your ships. It's not like that's his plan B. Like this is his plan A. He's doing this thing. Yep. It needs to be done. He sees it needs to be done and he can do it. So this is what men do in this world. They see something important that needs to be done that no one else is doing and say, maybe that's the thing I need to be doing. and they take on endeavors, and they do courageous and bold and intrepid things, and they break new ground, and they bend paradigms, and they're part of the immune system of humanity that tries to self-heal this place while these other fucks run rampant acting like tumors.
Yeah, it's well said and very on point. I kind of just want to, I don't know if it's like a parable or just like a saying. It's probably like one of those Eastern like gems that I'm horribly bastardizing with my Western
rendition. An idiom, Gadawi would say.
It's a what?
It's an idiom.
Oh, okay, sure, yeah. So do forgive my idiotic attempt at the appropriate idiom, but what it's loosely is that for the beginner, it's very simple. For the intermediate, it's very, very complicated. And for the master, it's simple again. And so that's the idea that you will go through those motions. Scott, you talk about entering into that environment, doing a lot of normie things. Even from a spiritual perspective, you'll be doing the most mundane things in the highest echelon of conduct, both internally and externally. And so that's one of those things. To reach the full culmination is almost a return to one. And you can look at like an example of that, of like Thomas Keller from the French Laundry being there sweeping the floors as just like a part of what it is to continue to embody and represent every different step of what it is to be at the top. It's to know the full stretch of the ladder.
That's awesome.
Full stretch of the ladder. You're talking about an extension ladder, of course, not a step ladder. Step ladders don't extend. They open up. Teace, aside from your YouTube page, do you want people to go to Conspiracy Synergy? Where else do you want people to hit it up?
Yeah, so I mean, like all of my stuff is on teace.ca, teace.ca. All of the clips that I've been putting up recently have just been on the YouTube page. I will eventually end up putting that on the other streaming sites as well in like a large kind of like few hour drop. And that's just because it actually does take a long time to upload all these different things in addition to the editing and et cetera and so forth. So you can go to conspiracysynergy.com for the mini documentaries, which took a really long time to do. These ones that I'm doing now, like the one that I did for Scott this afternoon was like 2 hours, but that's because I already have the footage. I already have the various different composite edits of not just the footage that I did myself, but the things that like I've gathered from online, you know, like stock footage, all these different things. So when you already have all that, it takes what would otherwise be like a day to a day and a half job, and it makes it very simple. So it's one of those things where as you move forward with the project, it becomes more manageable. And I don't remember the quote that you were talking about from Lincoln or something before when it came to the idea of distilling things. If you want something in a long version, I can give that to you next week. But if you want the short version, it'll take a few months, something like that.
Yeah, if you want a 3-hour speech, I can do it this afternoon. If you want a 30-minute speech, it's going to be a week.
Yeah, that's basically what I did to create the documentaries that are on the front page for Conspiracy Synergy. And that's 6 different content creators and also touching on the Independent Media Alliance, Richard Grove. So a number of different people outside of what those documentaries directly focused on. And I swear to you people, if you just pick one of those documentaries that kind of like has a voice that you might think would resonate with someone who's just starting to wake up to this stuff. It is a really meaningful personal introduction to the people, not just the information. And that matters a lot. So much of what this is the emotional discomfort of stumbling through the darkness, thinking that you're all alone when you're really just a couple of steps away from what you need to know. So that can be scary and intimidating for people who haven't been through it before. That's why I create the media that I create, to give people that door and the railing so that they can get past that anxiety and that very uncomfortable feeling and hopefully reach the other side in one piece rather than just falling to pieces.
They just need to know it's 2 steps to the light switch.
Yeah.
You got to have the confidence to be able to take that step and then take another step, and then you'll find the light switch, and then you don't have to take more steps in the dark because you're starting to enlighten yourself with education. And this is what it looks like when you go to teace.ca. And it's this show right here, this Conspiracy Synergy from the past 5 years. Well, technically, it's going into the 6th year right now. You're going to have to update this. It's an interweb show. And when you click it, you can start to see things that, oh, look, there's time codes. So that means these are videos. And you click on them and you watch them and you get all learnified and educated on these types of topics, because it's not just about, do you know this? It's the people you're trying to communicate. And this is how you build a bridge. Instead of you trying to say, such and such runs the world, you can sit down and say, hey, let's watch this thing. It might be fun. And then you have questions and you talk and you look stuff up and you maybe have some debate and you come to a higher understanding. And that would be a good use of time every day if people could just do just a little bit of that. and not be so dumbed down. So Teace, I want to thank you for investing some of your time this evening. Not all your time. You got other stuff you're going to do. But let me also set up this next clip that we're going to play that Scott hasn't seen yet. What I really enjoyed.
Dude, thank you, bro. That's freaking awesome. So pumped.
Oh yeah, dude. Wait, I've seen it too. So you haven't. That's the best part. So Tease, when the camera flies into the barn and we see Scott Armstrong on the flying V, fucking shredding, okay? Is that you just walking up with a like a steady cam, a gimbal? Did you have any stabilization? What makes the cinematography happen in this shot?
It's a gimbal. And so one of the things that's really happened since I went to film school is that so much of the equipment that previously would have been just ridiculously expensive or technically exorbitant is now accessible to just about everyone. I mean, it costs like $600, so it's still expensive hardware in a sense. But if you look at compared to like Steadicams and all this other stuff, so it's one of those things where it limits me in the sense of focus pulls. So there'll be times when, as I'm going in and out of things, it's not the correct focus, but that's just because of me still developing certain aspects of my filmmaking aptitude. I'm not usually the guy who's behind the camera, but for this entire series, I needed to. And so
better when you are. When you're rolling around on the ground and getting the shots, that's part of you, dude.
Oh no, like I have a good visual eye, so I know how to do that well. But as far as just like, Hold Me, my first feature film, that was my friend at the time, Axel. He was the director of photography. He also did that for Blindfold, which is the first short film that I did that I met Rich through, that had me on Corbett something like 13 or 14 years ago now. And so it's one of those things where a lot of the time, and I went to like New York Film Academy, they teach you everything. So I have the skill sets to do this. I guess I'm just mentioning that we'll find ourselves comfortably outsourcing things to other people that if we took upon ourselves, even for a short interval, we might actually grow from. And so it's one of those things where if you ever find yourself without, maybe just find it within and then work with it. But at the same time, understands that there's a learning curve. Hence, my focus isn't perfect all the time.
Next time you make it out here to the East Coast, if you are willing to travel heavy on the way back, like if you don't pack your 50 pounds on the way out and you travel light, do you ever still film with a full-size camera?
I just use like a Nikon. And so it's like an inherited camera from my dad. It's pretty minor. It'd basically just be like a photographer kind of like simple pack.
Well, if you used like the C100 type of cinema cameras, I have a legit Steadicam vest and arm that I don't use anymore. And I would love it to go to someone who could appreciate such an artifact of the early 21st century, because when you had to balance an 8-pound camera and a big lens, you actually need the vest and the arm and not the thing from India that they try to sell you that looks like the thing. It doesn't do the thing. So anyway, I got that. I've got some shoulder rigs and matte boxes and follow focus type stuff that might
sounds
aid
like
in
that's
your
the
endeavors.
invite. That sounds like that's the invite to go do a Richard Grove documentary. There you go.
Yeah, help me clean out my film closet. I got lots of equipment.
We'll see what happens in the world and fuel prices. That might be a thing in the years to come. But man,
they're coming out with teleportation, dude. Didn't you hear that guy from FEMA? He
Oh,
fucking teleports the Waffle House
are they teleporting us to the fake Mars set as well?
into
Like,
ditches. No, that was a real story from the past week. He's high up in the administration of FEMA too. It's like number 2 or number 3 or something like that. But that's silliness. But teleportation might be a thing. It might be a thing. It might also tie into something in the next block at some point. I'm not sure. I can't tell you till we get there. But Teace, I want to thank you for being on tonight, for sharing your wisdom. We are going to now go to another piece of Teace. It's a piece of his heart, and it regenerates after he puts each one out. So his heart is still very full, like the Grinch after he did all that learning that time. So it takes nothing away from him. It's not a zero-sum game, like many people would tell you. Just my proof will be Gödel's incompleteness theorem. So just read that, and that proves everything I just said. So this piece is something it's a vignette he did on Scotty Armstrong, and I think you captured many of his fascinating and intrepid capacities. Not all of them, of course. We didn't see like Handyman Scott. You know, some of the versions of Scott that are out there didn't make it in this video, but it's only like a 6-minute video. You can only squeeze so much of them in there as you can. So without further ado, we're going to another one of Teace's pieces. You can catch him on the YouTube, T Snyder. And this one features the youthful Scott Armstrong.
Grand Theft World is a weekly show where they take current events and then gives you more context to understand what's going on, which is great, because when I started with Truthzilla, that was the whole idea of Truthzilla. It's like, right when COVID happened, everybody needed to understand what was going on, and in order to do that, they needed to understand what 9/11 was, what MK Ultra was, like all these things, right? And so I think Grand Theft World is such an incredibly powerful show in that regard, where it shows you, like, in order to understand what's going on, like any current event, pick your current thing, whatever it is, there's so much that you have to understand before you can even wrap your mind around having an opinion on what this is. And so the long format of Grand Theft World allows plenty of time to dive in, and with Richard's vast knowledge on all these topics, he's really allowed to provide primary source documents to show and illustrate a complete timeline of these things that gives you a much better understanding of what we're seeing today.
You're gonna laugh, you're gonna like this fucking show. You hear me? Jesus. So yeah, you guys can talk amongst yourselves, but we will be back here momentarily, and we're all just gonna laugh our asses off. So come on back soon.
And I was like, hey Ryan, I'm gonna be passing through Nashville on the way to Chattanooga, I'd love to have lunch. And then a couple days later, he just texts me out of the blue and goes, hey, actually I could use some help with some stuff. If you end up in Nashville, like, you know, maybe we work together. I'm like, okay, I'm going to Nashville. So that was right here. This is why I ended up in Nashville, because of Ryan.
I basically just had a thought about it. I was like, you know, I'd got the office space in Franklin for the idea of building out, growing, you know, had open space, and I just knew he was looking. I said, well, then why don't you just move to Franklin, Tennessee, Nashville, and you can work in the office for free, you know, just come along, you know. I'm glad we did it too, because it's definitely a growing, you know, we all need to work together in this field, help each other, a leg up, you know what I mean?
Dude, yeah, so such an honor to have been a part of T-Lab, dude, so cool, just amazing, dude.
Oh shit, that is not the right cable at all. That is for silly people that have iPhones.
I met a girl on a dating app that lived in Memphis, and I went to go visit her. Took her out on a date, and before I went to go actually drive out there, she's like, you know, there's something I gotta tell you, just be sure. She's like, when you come here, there's a chance you might get robbed. And I was like, what? Yeah, I'm like, what the fuck? Like there's a chance you might get robbed in Memphis? She's like, yeah, if it happens, just go with it. Just let it happen. It happens all the time. And she's like, my car's been stolen twice. Like, it's just something that happens. I'm like, what the fuck are you even talking about?
So as far as Clip Genie goes, so at this point, I'd already gone through the autonomy course, Richard Grove's autonomy course. And so I knew a thing or two about sales pitches and stuff like that. And I was like, well, out of all the shows in the world, what really needs Clip Genie is Grand Theft World. And even possibly Peace Revolution, or all of Richard's content, whatever. So I got on Richard's calendar, as he says. I requested a meeting, and I was going to go pitch something to the guy that taught me how to pitch things. So I was very nervous. And I was like, oh boy. So I had my ducks in a row. I had a PowerPoint presentation. I had all my everything lined up, ready to go. Went into the meeting, and it was like Richard and his team. You know, there was like lots of people there. And so I did my sales pitch, and Richard was like, well, yes, obviously I'm going to buy this. I accept your offer. He was like, I knew within a minute that I was going to accept your offer. You did a great job. And what do you usually do on Monday mornings? And I was like, oh, Monday mornings? I don't know. I usually I do handyman work or something. Like, I don't know. He's like, why? I was like, why? And he said, well, Tony Myers just left Grand Theft World, and we need someone to help co-host the show. And I was like, oh, dang, okay. So I see what you're saying. Okay. And yeah, I think it was an immediate yes on my end as well, because I knew that that's a very big commitment. I know that show runs for 7 hours until 3 or 4 in the morning every Sunday night, and so I knew that my Mondays were then going to be shot. But that's fine. That's the beauty of having applied all of the stuff I learned in autonomy to create an autonomous life for myself, where I work for myself, I generate my own income through various means. So I had the flexibility to do something like that. So I'm like, yes, let's do it. And then all the fear crept in of like, yeah, so the audience expects somebody like Tony Myers, and I'm not at that level, so I had to do some soul searching and realize, you know, I just bring something different to the table. That what I have to offer is different, but I think also valuable. And so it's been an amazing experience and journey, not only working with Richard, but then just seeing how I fit in with the show And, you know, it's a different show because the chemistry that Tony and Richard had, that's what drew me into the show, because I was a listener of Grand Theft World since it came out. So obviously I got a lot of value out of that. And so I know what being a host on Grand Theft World consists of. And so, you know, again, I had to overcome a lot of the fear, and I knew people were going to be judging me like, oh, you're not as smart as Tony and this and that. But to me, it's like, you know, I try to offer the value that I have to offer. And I like to be, really for me, it's just like I like to help encourage people to lean into their strengths, like whatever that is, you know, and to use that to be of service to whatever community they're a part of, and to level up their lives, and to look at the horrors of the world as an opportunity and not something to get depressed about, black-pilled about. To find that because it's dark, because it's awful out there, there are people that need things, and so find what you have to offer for that. And so I like to motivate people, and I feel like I can deliver that, and I do.
Trump some information. We have a gigantic opiate problem in this country, obviously. In 2024, more than 80,000 people died of overdoses. It's a horrible number. And there's more than 5 million people that are addicted to opiates right now in this country. With one dose of Ibogaine, more than 80% of people are free of that addiction. With 2 doses, it's more than 90%. I sent him that information. The text message came back, sounds great. Do you want FDA approval? Let's do it. It was literally that quick. These drugs are illegal not because they're harmful. They're illegal because of the 1970 Controlled Substances Act that was passed by the Richard Nixon administration. They did it to target the civil rights movement and the anti-war movement. It's not because these drugs harm people. And for 56 years, we've lived under those terrible conditions. We're free of that now. We're free of that now. Thanks to all these people that we see next to me, and thanks to President Trump.
We all respect Joe, and he's a little bit more liberal than... That's okay. I have a lot of friends that are liberal, but Joe is an amazing guy, and he wrote me a little note about this, and I had it checked out. I didn't just do it. I had it checked out. I went to Bobby and Oz. I went to some of the people that work for you, real pros, and everybody came back with the same answer. You know, normally they'll come back, because this happens a lot. I have a couple of them like that, where they're not sure. It's like, you know, it goes 2 ways. This thing, everybody thought it was incredible. And I told Bobby, I said, Bobby, let's just do it and get Oz involved, and it's going to get done so quickly, and you guys did a great job.
I completely disapprove. You know, people don't understand that psychedelics are not a joke. They're more destructive and dangerous than recreational drugs. I would rather have people take pharmaceuticals and alcohol, which sounds insane because of how toxic and disgusting it is, but it's actually preferable to psychedelics. And I say this as a former psychonaut. It's kind of cringy that I even know that term, but I used to be deep into surfing Finnegan's Wake. I was deep into Robert Anton Wilson, Terence McKenna, Timothy Leary. I was going into that world because at the time of my life, I was angry at my father. So I opened that portal. I went into psychedelics. I took psychedelic mushrooms, lysergic acid, DMT. I did the whole gambit, and I thought I was getting spiritually sound. I thought I was going deeper and deeper. I thought I was being profound and insightful, but all it did was leave me psychic scars permanently. I don't think it's a joke. I think marijuana is actually more dangerous than alcohol as well. It's preferable for you to be an alcoholic than a pothead. And I would have never said such a thing because the health metrics that they put out and they purport and they normalize will of course make it seem like psychedelics are at least better because they're plants. They're entheogens, they're medicine. I can hear an argument for microdosing. I can hear an argument for maybe utilizing them to cut off addictions or recalibrating circuitry based on faulty imprinting and trauma. I can hear those arguments. Those are feasible, but Ibogaine, some of this stuff, it needs to be incredibly controlled to actually have the positive feedback and benefit that you're looking for. It's not a joke. It's not a joke. I've done it all, actually. And it's kind of embarrassing that I'm sharing this, but, I was lost and I was trying to find my own community. And of course, going to art school and being around all these eccentric personalities, I had a professor said, hey, listen, I can get you the best original, authentic sunshine acid from the 60s. A boomer, of course, giving basically college kids drugs. I thought this will take it to the next level. I'll get real surreal and Dali-esque in my painting if I do this. So I did embark in it. And it fucking flipped my shit. I had 10 times ego death and I got so lost in all of this. After that, I proceeded with this kind of crew of his and this tutelage and all of these people normalizing this, thinking that we're being deep and profound. And I agree that there are boundaries that are beyond our senses. And I believe that this is a multi-dimensional universe and most people are in faulty one-dimensional reality tunnels. But you don't need to take an entheogen to melt all those boundaries away and for you to actually be in an undifferentiated state, because it feels incredibly spiritually resounding. It feels like it's connecting everything, but it's also at the cost of you losing your social cohesion of what actually is gonna bring true merit for having pillars in a stable structural society. You lose your structural integrity in your culture. So that's the problem with these hippies. They can talk about all of it being one undifferentiated love all day, woo-woo, and it feels good, it feels amazing, and it's actually very relaxing. And it is very true in many metrics. The problem is that it's actually not going to allow you to protect yourself proper, in conjunction to the fact that this idea that everyone is also going to join in your brigade of one love and peace forever and unity forever. No one's going to do it. You're going to get killed. Your entire tribe will be wiped out. You need protection. Be just as armed and masculine as feminine and inclusive. You need a balance. And that's the problem. Psychedelics makes men go totally on one side. And don't get me wrong, I kind of am in a way. It's very strange, but this weird fusion of a anarchist, hippie, Christian nationalist. I'm a strange animal myself, but I must say I have experienced that side. And ultimately, especially in this epoch that we're going forward, you are creating a portal for the antenna that is your brain into the spiritual world. And you should not play around with those demons. You're inviting spiritual beings, and often they're going to be demons, into your circuitry. If you take these psychedelics, these plants, these so-called medicines, then you're basically opening the door. You're allowing creatures come through and seep into your reality. You should be in base reality. Listen to Saint Ignatius. Saint Ignatius wisely said, after experiencing all the spiritual demonology, including being a successful exorcist and casting out demons to those that were brought to him, the ultimate spiritual way of atonement is fasting, being in the sun, prayer, and silence. It sounds so sobering and simple, but that is the way. That's what you should be doing. Everything else is very dangerous. It's a slippery slope. People end up inevitably playing God and supporting transhumanism, which is the reason why Rogan is hanging out with guys like Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, and Donald Trump in the first place. And all these guys were in cahoots with Epstein as well. They're very close with these people. We know for a fact Elon was consistently trying to go on Epstein Island, and he was trying to party and hang out with them all the time. No one talks about that, and those weren't even redacted in the files that were exposed. So it's kind of crazy. I'm just letting you all know, be very careful. This is not a joke. We are stepping in closer and closer to revelations. A lot of you don't understand. AI in conjunction to psychedelics, hell will be real very soon. We will see Lucifer's reign over this planet very soon. And the people who are not embarking and staying sober and also understanding that it is a dangerous situation where we allow the machine world to take over the human apparatus, they'll be the ones safe. Because the craziest part of all this is essentially, this is going to become a massive web of self-participation. They're gonna be all cooking themselves. They're all gonna fuck themselves over by taking all these plant drugs and feeling like they're hip and liberal and free and open-minded, in conjunction to indulging in video games that are AI-oriented with AI porno and every demonological aesthetic image that you can imagine. That's what's gonna come around the corner. All of this is dancing with the devil. What's gonna come around the corner? We're gonna have those goggles attached to our face while we are on entheogens, completely disconnected from base reality. And I'm telling you, look, I understand the argument. There are some incredibly traumatized people who have been abused so deleteriously that you can microdose, you can play with psilocybin at that degree, you can start healing synapses. I don't admonish the evidence. I understand that. By softening up restriction, and again, I'm not like prohibition kind of guy, I understand what happens, but the social stigma that's associated with psychedelics will go away. I understand that the boomer right created this weird tyrannical image where people can't live and let live at all. I told you I'm kind of a far right hippie. Look at my long hair myself. But that's not my point. I just genuinely don't want to see people just smoking cannabis everywhere I go. Like, I wouldn't want my kids walking around and they're surrounded by potheads. Like, this is a problem. This is just more self-medication from a sick society. We have to be very careful here. I don't like how Joe Rogan is becoming an ambassador for pushing out just a new form of substance excessiveness that will be utilized. People can say, yeah, but you can't take it recreationally, it just wouldn't work. Fair. But there's also people that are gonna now fall into the slippery slope of dabbling with it at all in the first place. We have to learn to be content being sober, natural, either fasted or maybe have some raw milk and bask in the sun. That's all you need. I'm not a control freak. It's about being stable. It's about being in the image of God. The image of God is not connected to interdimensional beings that have returned. But you can also understand that just from education. The problem with human beings is their egos get too big for the britches and they want to play God. And when you play God, automatically, you can't have both at the same time simultaneously. You deny actually following God. And that's the problem. And that's what this new advent of psychedelics being normalized in this culture is about. The fact that Donald Trump is in front of Joe Rogan and they're endorsing each other for the naturalization of ibogaine onto the citizenry, that's insane. That's a very dangerous slippery slope. And I want you to all be mindful of this. Anybody listening to this here, do not normalize psychedelic usage into your life. These are incredibly powerful entities that want to possess you. You will literally be possessed. In conjunction to the fact that his buddy Peter Thiel is ushering in AI at this unprecedented rate, that combination, I am telling you, we are in the end times. I don't mean this in a namby-pamby over spiritual manner. I mean, we're going to see being classified as an acceptable sexual category in my lifetime. We're going to see a multiplicity of pagan gods being worshipped through this artificial illusion. And when it's backed by psychedelics, man, we are inviting the asteroid. And Jesus Christ cannot come back soon enough.
All right, that's a thought piece there by Arthur Kwon Lee. And usually we play segments of his and there's no commentary because I usually agree with a lot of what he's saying. He's First Amendment and he has the right to say what he wants to say. And in this case, I'm gonna retort in a second. But Scott, let's go to you and see what you thought about the situation. Given that you counsel people in various step programs to get away from such things, right? There's a double-edged sword with psychedelics. You can use it to break addictions, but as things go, it's very much, in some of these cases, has anti-addiction properties built into it.
Yeah,
of
course.
More advanced.
I mean, of course, I gotta say, like, Teace is hanging out in the green room. I gotta say, bro, thank you so much for that. That was like the most touching, awesome thing I've ever seen in my life. Like, what the heck? Oh my gosh, that was unbelievable. So thank you. That was
Teace, you're still here. You could comment too, you know.
Oh, Scott goes first and then I'll jump in later. But yeah,
right, cool.
Thought-provoking clip, and then I'll bug out after that so you guys can go into the late night. But here is Scott with the rehabilitation. I talked to him about like working with people who had been addicts before, and it's so interesting. So if you haven't heard him talk about it, please go at length.
Yeah, dude. So basically, when I saw this, when I heard this, now I've actually been critical of Joe Rogan about this for a long time. He's been doing the ibogaine thing. He's been talking about this stuff for a very, very long time. And he's also very critical of 12-step. He thinks that 12-step is not a good approach. And so he's publicly out there saying, isn't it like a cult or something? But it's due to a lack of information for him. Now, I don't think 12-step is necessarily for everybody. You know, there may be a different modality that resonates with somebody who suffers with addiction that they might find relief from. But I think it's the best. I definitely think 12-step is the best. And I say that confidently because there's no other thing out there that has the proven record of helping more people get sober and stay sober for over 100 years than that. And it actually drives the scientific community insane. I witnessed it firsthand because they don't, like, to them, they are the science people. They have all the answers, and that anybody that isn't in the science community doesn't have answers. And so 12-step, the answer is you have to find a power greater than yourself. Or in other words, you have to find something outside of yourself that's greater than your addiction. That's the whole idea. It doesn't have to be God. It doesn't have to be religious at all. And a lot of times if people have a tough time with religion or whatever, or God or anything, you say, okay, the power of the group collectively here, sitting here, is greater than you. This can be your higher power. You can do whatever you want. But it has to be something bigger than your addiction, because when you remove the drugs or the alcohol, you're left with a giant vacuum in your body, because the drugs were your higher power. The drugs, the alcohol, they were your higher power because every thought, every action that you did was in service to that higher power. So when you remove that, you have to replace it with a new higher power, basically. So anyway, so it drives the science people crazy that even till this day, the most effective thing against addiction is this program that talks about God. Now, when I was in my counseling days, in the agency I was working for, I wasn't even allowed to teach 12-step because it was technically like religious or whatever. But they have all these things called MAT, medically assisted treatment, like Suboxone, methadone, all these different things. What's it now? Naltrexone, all these things that are like, they're kind of crutches. And I do believe in like harm reduction, medical assisted treatment to get you over the initial phase, get you over the hump. But a lot of these are government subsidized. They're all big pharma. And I know people that are on Suboxone for years. They don't take that next step to get off. So they're still technically on like an opioid or even methadone too. They're not incentivized to get off of it because the government's getting paid to keep them on it, So the ibogaine thing is again something very similar to this, because basically the reason why I have such a big problem with it, and this is how like naltrexone is very much advertised. Like I saw an ad on like Fox News. It's like a pill that'll cure your addiction, which is like a joke. Isn't that like what is that, like a Bill Hicks joke or something, where it's like, or a George Carlin joke? I can't remember. One of the classic jokes where it's like, every addict is just waiting for the pill that will cure their addiction, because they're like, ooh, well, if one's really good, then what about two? What about three, right? That's just the idea of like, a pill to cure your addiction is also just hilarious to think about. But basically the idea that if they're saying in their marketing and their advertising, it's like, you take this pill or you take this drug and you will be cured. Okay. Like, that's not at all it, dude. Like recovery from addiction is, I think, a lifelong process. And I like the 12-step approach. Some people take issue with this, where it's like we identify as like, oh, I'm an addict. Hi, I'm Scott. I'm an addict, even though I have like 10 years sober or whatever. It's like, to me, that self-identification acts as a reminder that I'm one stupid step away from being right back where I was, because I have been one step away from, I've been sober for a while, and then I'm take one drink and then I'm right back where I was. You know what I mean? So it's like, I like that reminder. But the idea being that, you take this pill or you take this ibogaine treatment and all of a sudden you'll be cured. Now, maybe in some cases there will be, but I think it's a false sense of security. And again, I think it's great to get someone over the hump. Like, let's do that. But if it's like the end all be all, like you'll be cured and you don't have to do any further work, you don't have to go in and dig and figure out why you're using drugs in the first place. Like all the spiritual transformation that happens in a 12-step program, where you go through all 12 steps and you dig out all the shit from your past and you face it head on, and you basically then get a clean slate. You clean up your side of the street, you make amends, and then you have this program to consistently make sure you're not, digging yourself into any holes that you can't get out of, and therefore causing you to get loaded again. So it's like a whole process. It's like a whole formula. And the thing about it is, like, the 12 steps, there's only mention of drugs or alcohol once in the first step. And the other 11 steps have nothing to do with drugs or alcohol. And so it's like so that tells me right there that the problem is not the drugs, it's not the alcohol, it's something very deep on a spiritual level that has to be addressed before a person can recover. And so that's my problem with it, is that it's a false sense of security, and it's a promise that, like, oh, you just take this little thing and you'll be fine. And I don't think that's the case at all. But if that's what gets people to recovery, I'm all about it. But and then for them to go then and diminish a 12-step approach like Joe Rogan, because he's got millions of listeners, and I guarantee there's lots of people out there that hear Joe Rogan talking shit about 12 steps, like, oh, I ain't doing that shit. And he's probably responsible for more people dying, probably from just drug overdoses, than anybody imaginable out there, because of his stance on the 12 steps. So I don't like him for that reason. So there you go.
Teace, you got something?
Yeah, sure. I can go next.
Unleash.
Whew, okay. This is a deeply sophisticated and multifaceted issue that goes in all different directions, both beneficial and very detrimental. And part of that has to do with the manufacturer of the substance as much as what the substance is, the amount that is used, the responsible environment in which it is used. To give you an example of Charlie, who is himself a psychonaut, that's Charlie Robinson. At the end of the macroaggressions documentary, he did a bufo ceremony, which is toad poison, and then he tripped balls on it. And as a, like, in order to get permission to film that, I had to talk to Shaman Bearheart, who was the practitioner who was there accompanying him so that he would have his safe journey. And the only reason that I was allowed to have the technology of the camera present is because its emissions would not affect the state that he was in because he was completely unconscious. Whereby other applications of drugs, the technology that they're in the soup of would influence and affect their trip. Now, stop and think about the deployment of 5G or 6G or these various different things. Stop and think about the Esalen Institute and the various different overlaps between the implications of the thought movements that were then trickled into being to then co-opt human beings and sabotage the consciousness movement so that you would see a parallel to the Merry Pranksters via Laurel Canyon. This is a long-seated development in order to attempt to hand big pharma in a different direction. One of those being kind of like subscription model nanobot healthcare premise. The other being the idea that a Pfizer issued psilocybin is suddenly the solution to everything. And so there's a lot going on all at the exact same time. There's an example, I believe it was, of a red laser that was put on a wall. People were given DMT, and they all saw the same code in it. Now, that's a very interesting thing because you can juxtapose that with the red goggles that were used in Vietnam. When they used red goggles in Vietnam, they'd see figures in the darkness and they would interact with them. Well, then you also have to ask how many people in Nam were tripping balls on substances. What is the combination of a particular substance with a particular technology in an enhanced stress environment as you're actively being experimented on by the military to push the threshold of humanity to then war game and prep for what will happen decades later? This isn't as simple as, are you using it? It's, what is the agenda to get you to use it? And that's a whole bag of worms that Richard is way better at getting into than me.
Trump at one point during the press conference said he wanted to try the Ibogaine. And that would be pay-per-view tickets. That's more popular than UFC right there.
Yeah,
because he would probably have the Scrooge, the whole Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol is the psychedelic ego-death experience of Scrooge, where he reflects on his past, present, and future and becomes a better person because of that short-time experience. And then he has long-term, like, being nice because he returns to the normal base state of consciousness. That reset for human beings throughout history has been something that was indigenous to cultures all over the world and was snuffed out by Jesuits, Catholic Church, various empires who wanted to make sure that people are cut off from whatever source they were connected to. And that's a thing. As far as Ibogaine, it comes from the root of, I think, a tree in Africa. And the people who take that, they talk to the Bwiti, B-W-I-T-I. And I saw some footage a long time ago of like lifetime heroin addicts and stuff going through Ibogaine treatment, and it was horrifying. So you could see how by doing a heavier duty experience that you would be like, yeah, no more heroin after having to do that shit. So again, it might be interesting to see Trump in the midst of such searching. Now, let's talk about, you were talking about the ego. The term in history before Aldous Huxley used it in his book Island in 1963, the moksha medicine that brought about like a form of ego death, right? And there's religious texts like the Bhagavad Gita and the Rig Veda. There's a whole bunch of different texts that describe elements of consciousness and navigating that. There's the Egyptian Book of the Dead, the Tibetan Book of the Dead. There's various pieces of culture. But sometimes this technology has also been used against people or understood by a group and then broken so that the people can't connect into that system anymore. So part of it is the use of the terms psychedelics, which is a Greek term, versus another Greek term, entheogens, plants that like open the doorway to divinity within. Right? So when people have said over history that the kingdom of God is within you, it's not something out there. It's not a man in the sky. It's a thing that we have access to as individuals that's within us. That has been a popularized term. So now you bring it up to, let's go to the beginning of the 21st century. Let's do early 21st century history. There used to be a website, you can find it on Internet Archive actually, called joerogan.net. This is way before he had a podcast or anything else on there. So what would you find on joerogan.net? You would find Bill Hicks. That's where I met the comedy of Bill Hicks. Doug Stanhope was on there. He had some stuff about NASA moon landings. There was like an animation of aliens coming down, giving mushrooms to monkeys, and then monkeys evolving into people and building pyramids and stuff like that. What else was on there? Oh, Kevin Booth. Kevin Booth is the producer for Bill Hicks, good friend of Rogan back in the day. And he had, what was his, it was like Third Eye Studios or something like that, right? So there was a coterie of people in the early 21st century who were like putting some of this stuff out on the internet. And it was pretty interesting. You know, you might find some Terrence McKenna or something over there that would give you outside the modern narrative. But as things went on, there's a group called, there was a thing back in the 60s, maybe 1967, called the Good Friday Experiment, where they took some Harvard students into a church setting and they gave them psilocybin mushrooms, and they had religious experiences. Now, there wasn't a whole lot of information available on such things until the 20th century. 1945, the Nag Hammadi Library is recovered. These are some books that are in jars that are found by a farmer in Egypt. And then you have the Dead Sea Scrolls found in the caves of Qumran in 1947. Similar, a guy looking for his lost goat finds some jars and things that have been preserved in a cave, and then they go onto the black market, and then eventually they get amalgamated, and eventually you have philologists, people who study words, and then people who study the history of religion to go over these documents. So within the past 80 years, there's some really interesting new documentation that is not new. It is recovered documentation from before the censorship of the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD. And you might ask, why, if we're talking about Joe Rogan and psychedelics and Trump, are we now in a 325 AD religion conversation? But I will connect the dots. Anyway, much later, there's a group out of Israel called the Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Studies, MAPS, run by a guy called Rick Doblin, who participated in the 1968 Good Friday experiment. So there's groups out there, and they're trying to figure out psychedelics. And for a long time, psychedelics were prevented from internalization in America. I think up until recently, it was like a 50-year penalty for possession of some of that stuff. It was heavier duty than if you talked out against a good ally nation state of ours. That's only like 10 years in some countries. 50 years, long time. So any research publication talking about it was very prohibitive. You find out later that MAPS, that did a lot of the psychedelic studies, they had co-interest and funding from groups like the Scottish Rite Freemasons. So there's that history, but I also want to include this. Can we tangent back just for 5 minutes? When you guys were talking about substance abuse, I wanted to show this book real quick, and I pulled it off here. You guys know Joe Plummer, Tragedy and Hope 101. If you go to joeplummer.com, he has a free book. It's an impeccable book. It's about success. And so I listened to the book. We were choosing audio narration. I was helping him find a narrator for the audio version of this. And he had another book, and he's like, here's me reading the narration. So I listened to it. I was like, this is a great book. And he's like, yeah, that's the book I wrote when, on how to stop drinking. And I said, that's fascinating, because I just, went through the whole book. It didn't say a single thing about alcohol as a substance. And he's like, no, that's not, the point is like, finding a way to use your brain for success doesn't leave you room for other such antics. So anyone here who needs just another tool, or you might have a friend or family member who's afflicted, and they're not going to 12-step meetings or anything, that book on success is free. Joe gives it away for free on his site, and I can't recommend it more highly. And it's just good overall if you're trying to get your thoughts in line to be successful and consistent in life. Now, let's go back to the topic at hand, the use of psychedelics in culture, because I think it is worthy of note in this day and age, given the environment. So that's not the book we're going to lead with. That's more like a closing book. Let's go to this one. This is called Entheogens and the Future of Religion, and it has a lot to do with how entheogens were used in religion. Oh, it's like the proto aspects of religion. Let's say Catholic communion might have some time in the past been a communication union between you and your creator directly, without a priest, without a wafer and wine, because those things might represent something else that was internalized to deliver a God talking to experience. So there's books like that. Then in the 1957, technically, Cover of Life magazine featured the Gordon Wasson visit to Maria Sabina, who was not Zapotec. Where do they get the good coffee these days? Anyway, Chiapas Mountains. I forget what area it was. Anyway, the whole area gets ruined by tourism because she opens up to the CIA's Gordon Wasson, and Western culture starts to find out about their psychedelic rituals. She ended up dying of like starvation in the 1980s. It was really atrocious. So she shared multi-generational ritual knowledge and things like that had empowered and protected her people. And she said that after she shared with Gordon Wasson that the mushrooms stopped talking to her. Now, I do have a very rare artifact here. This is a DVD of Maria Sabina conducting the mushroom veladas that were indigenous to her family. And she's like a female shaman who should be more famous in history and definitely suffered for sharing her wisdom with outsiders. Now, I have other artifacts here like this. Let's see. It was too many books to bring in, so I just grabbed some of the stuff that was lightweight. This is an outline for Soma, the divine mushroom of immortality. Throughout history, there's been various writings that have influenced various popes. Like the popes dress like this mushroom. Let's just start there. You can go to Pope Julius II, Clement. There's a whole bunch of them. They got the mushroom outfit. There's a whole bunch of iconography and symbology that fits in with that. Defining the ahistoricity of Jesus. Let's see, define, that's the second part of that. So that would go with these ones over here. The Chosen People, study of Jewish history from the time of exile until the revolt of Bar Kokhba. And this goes with this book, written from the Dead Sea Scrolls, The Sacred Mushroom and the Cross. Now, this is a very, very, very rare book, and it is republished if you wanted to have an artifact like this and see. This comes directly as translation from the Dead Sea Scrolls, which predate any type of New Testament stories or anything else like that that has been found in the public, and many variety of sources on that. Now, you might think, wow, that's kind of blasphemous. But wait, as they say, there is more. Because if we go to this book over here, now I will put my spectacles on and read into the record for this one. This one's called The Holy Mushroom, Evidence of Mushrooms in Judeo-Christianity. Well, that's fascinating. A critical reevaluation of the schism between John Marco Allegro, Sacred Mushroom and the Cross, and R. Gordon Wasson, Life magazine, opened Maria Sabina's work to the Western world, over the theory on the entheogenic origins of Christianity presented in the Sacred Mushroom and the Cross. Now, right here, you can see artwork inside a cathedral that depicts giant mushrooms. This is Christian artwork. So I have many, many books documenting stained glass iconography of the Christian variety. There are some pictures in this book here. This is called the Canterbury Psalter. Let's see. And it's in France, if I remember correctly. This is Adam and Eve, the etymology of death on fire-eating stones. So maybe it wasn't an apple that gave them knowledge of good and evil. Maybe it was something else, according to the iconography of the early Christians, who were emancipated Roman slaves who wore Phrygian caps that became the liberty pole that is in the American Senate seal and the Army seal. It's all through American history, especially of the Revolution. So then you've got other Christian iconography that goes up through the 12, 13, 1400s, and it continues. But the point is, I want to read to you the epistle of the renegade bishops, because it's pretty striking once you start to put more and more pieces of the evidence together. And that epistle is a letter It should be back here at the back of the book. Here we go. This is all conspiracy theory. Feel free to disregard it and return to your football games. I say that with the utmost respect, especially if you're a Christian. Don't pay any attention to the artifacts and what they say. In an academic journal aptly titled Harvard Ukrainian Studies, in an article by Professor Harvey Goldblatt of Yale University, in this article, pages 47 and 75, is found a rare and obscure 16th century Christian text, the Epistle to the Renegade Bishops. This text was discovered in Ukraine, but was written in Ziroportmatu Monastery in Mount Athos Peninsula, Greece. The text is discussing the 40 martyrs of Sebaste, for whom the monastery was dedicated in the 13th century. I'm going to take a sip because this is a banger passage in the old epistle. There are other miraculous actions which occurred to honor and celebrate the memory of the 40 martyrs. These actions took place in the reign of Roman and other pious emperors who built a holy shrine in memory of the blessed martyrs and adored it exceedingly. When the names of the 40 martyrs were pronounced by the archpriest, there began to grow from the foot of the holy table a holy mushroom with its cap in the shape of 40 apples, which ascended over the holy table and overshadowed the entire sanctuary. And for this most glorious miracle, all present gave glory to God and to the 40 martyrs. And then the infirm found in the cloister were healed through the possibility of tasting the holy mushroom. Now it continues, and I just wanted to set that into the record that there is a crossover between Christianity and the things that are being approved for experimentation and research and study by our good President Orangeman. So in this milieu where the government has the right to experiment with psychedelics and do all this sort of stuff, and the individuals are deprived knowledge, experience, wisdom, understanding of the religious roots of such things, which is under your First Amendment rights, the right to practice your religion as you see fit. That is your personal right. I don't think it needs to be delegated or permitted by government type activities like they have going on right now. What they're trying to do is heal their soldiers that they hurt in situations by making them kill women and children and things like that that are very traumatic. And they're trying to create super soldiers for the future that will be blended with the AI, right? So if we don't learn knowledge of self and knowledge of our environment before they take away our ability to ever have such experiences for ourselves, I think we stand on the downside. So I neither agree with Rogan, but I do recognize his work over the years in bringing these things forth. And I don't agree with Kwon Lee. Please go, Teace. What do you got?
Yeah, so really, really important points. And as far as the deeply entrenched cultural roots from which much of this springs, it is the mystical faculties that have been afforded to everyone. And then really we can access them at any point. It's just that we exist in kind of like a terrarium environment that discourages that insight. And so it's one of those things. So a really great book that goes into the origins, not in his image. It goes into Gnosticism. It's John Lamb Nash. And it talks about the initiatory process that they would go about using psychedelics in order to be true to indigenous cultural roots. That was then hijacked, bastardized, and demonized by the church, who wanted to control that for their own trappings and teachings. The oldest documentation that are on Christianity were in the hands of the Gnostics prior to being grabbed on by the church to then be taken as a political tool. So that's one point. A really good book on mysticism, just in general. It's Mysticism by Meredith Underhill. Sorry, it doesn't have her name on here.
You put the Lobster Thermidor in the Ted Underhill account. That's the Underhills I know.
Okay, I think it's a different one, but yeah. Anyway, so Underhill's the last name.
It's all ball bearings.
A Study in the Nature and Development of Man's Spiritual Consciousness by Evelyn Underhill. So Mysticism, that's a book if you want to get into what that is, from the establishing the cultural roots, which are so different from how we think of them today. And another really quick example of that, The Way of the Shaman. by Michael Harner. This is kind of reads like Shamanism 101, and it has like really simple pictures in it and stuff. And it even has like a commentary by Carlos Castaneda saying that wonderful, fascinating Harner really knows what he's talking about. Now, on the darker side of things, I like the book MK Ultra Ritual Abuse and Mind Control, Tools of Domination for the Nameless Religion. And that's because there's a phenomenological overlap between possessions in the sense of demon possession and possession in the sense of using hard drugs. That's why when they charge you with possession, it's kind of like you're possessed by something. So there is a very deep and dark twist that can be applied to all of this. If you look at where they're potentially at in the biodigital convergence and the ability to either hack or influence us when we're placed in a susceptible state, you can look into the work of someone like Sabrina Wallace, and arguably they might be able to influence what our trips are. And if they can influence what our trips are, then they can poison or pervert or distort our ability to connect to source. So it's one of those things where it has a lot of potential if it's done right. But the people who are trying to put it in the light are pretty well all wrong. And from an anarchist perspective, we very much do have the right to do what we want with our bodies and put what we want into our bodies. But there's this kind of like substrate digital environment that has been built unbeknownst to us. And I am deeply worried that that is something that will impregnate us on a subconscious level to then see manifest from us that which we like. It's a Carl Jung quote, and I'm kind of bastardizing it. It's like, if you don't make the conscious known or present, then it will control your life and you'll think that it's fate. So this is one of those things where they can potentially give us the most deeply seated illusion that we are connecting to source when really it's just like CERN or something. And I don't know where we're at in the peculiar contortions of the human condition to try and turn us into plugs that receive whatever the hell they want to put in. So that's kind of just some additional thoughts and points of reference for the larger conversation at hand. And with that, we're going to pass it back to Rich because he was digging for some books, and then I'm going to bounce out. But much love to everyone. So here he is.
Thanks, Teace. That was great. And yeah, man. I just want to say real quick too is that like I'm actually I don't believe in the criminalization of these substances. I've done plenty of hallucinogens. I've done lots of psilocybin, lots of LSD, like back in my day, and I'm glad I had those experiences. You know what I mean? It's just like I've chosen a new path of complete abstinence from all mind-altering substances. And so it's not like all the stuff I was saying is not a knock to, that, but use responsibly because you might be jacking into the CERN supercomputer at this point, folks. So just be cautious. But, like I said, I'm glad I had those experiences. It opened my mind to a lot of stuff, but I'm different wavelength these days. And I just don't like the fact that they're promoting them as a cure for addiction. That was my whole point, but I'm not against them. So.
Well, there was always, call back to that famous caller from wherever it was that asked Joe Rogan on that show about the thing that Rick Strassman wrote about in this book. And that became a thing. I think this is probably 2004. If I squint hard, I can see 2001. So early 21st century. Somebody wanted to make a movie of this because not everyone reads. So that led to Mitch Schultz's business plan. This is one of the first business plans I ever read to look at like how to fund a documentary film project like that. Anyway, it's like a 50-page plan. And in 2008, I had some podcast listeners who flew me to Texas, and they had a birthday party for me. And I knew Mitch lived in Texas, and I had never met him in person. So I said, hey, come on down. And so he came down to this place, and we watched all his footage that he had shot to make the movie, which comes out in 2010. So this is 2008. So we're all watching like Dennis McKenna and Houston Smith and all these great minds and authors who had written on psychedelic books, and it was a good time. And Mitch was a filmmaker at the time, and he had just made a film he'd made a commercial on spec, a speculative commercial. So he made a BMW commercial, which was top quality, and BMW really should have bought it. It would have been a kick-ass commercial. But we talked Teleporter earlier. So he's in his garage. It's a riff from there's a documentary, not a documentary, independent film in the early 2000s called Primer, where these two guys develop time travel in their garage. It's a very interesting movie. You could watch it 20 times and still not figure out all the ins and outs. Very interesting. Mitch takes that idea, and so they're developing time travel in the garage, but they're going to make a BMW commercial. So they get the little weeble wobble to go from here to here to here, and they're like, we did it. And then they turn around and they look at the BMW, which is now obsolete. Nice job, guys. Your little invention has made one of these fun things obsolete. And then they say, bad idea. They spill coffee on the computer. They're like trying to destroy it so that they can have BMW still in their life, right? Now, if you're BMW, like that's a kick-ass commercial all day. So they should have bought its commercial. They didn't. Anyway, he moved on to other projects. And when he released the footage in final form, he was going to release it at the studio palatial estate in the upstate New York area of Alex Gray, if I can get his name on. There you go, Alex Gray, right? And that's a work of art made by Alex Gray. Not everyone has a signed work of art by Alex Gray, but I did gong him at the event. So what I did was, Mitch is going to premiere his film at Alex Gray's property in upstate New York. He had moved the Chapel of Sacred Mirrors from New York City, upstate New York. So he's like, hey, will you come film the premiere? So I'm like, that's very meta. I'm going to make a film about you guys watching a film that his art is kind of illustrated all throughout. So do you recall seeing this played on this show, Colby or Scott? The intro to the premiere of the DMT, the Spirit Molecule movie?
I don't know.
Okay, good. So it's not like we played it 4 weeks ago and I forgot because I'm old and I do too much time of live streams on Sundays. So what you're going to see here is I went to the event with my friends. This is one of my early filming endeavors. I probably did use the Steadicam vest, Teace, on this. I'm pretty sure I had to use it. I walked through Alex Gray's whole studio. They never let anyone film inside. So I have all sorts of footage from inside there. So we might let the first two parts play. This is 2010. So YouTube still made us upload everything in 10-minute chunks. So if we make it through the first 10 minutes and I don't find it too cringeworthy, because all I see are my mistakes. You guys, I don't know how you see it, but I see Mitch is out of focus, like Strassman's out of focus because I didn't know how to focus my camera, and it's focused on the big piece of art behind the guys sitting in front of it. So you'll see my mistakes. It's clear. It's 16 years ago. I'm okay with it if you guys are. It'll help set the stage because that was the first time the public was really hearing about psychedelics on another level that was like an official, like there was a movie out and there's a book out. And, I asked Strassman in the interview and I got him to say that the research was done by Scottish Rite Freemasons who were interested in such things for their esoteric studies. And it was a lot of fun and memorable event. So I want to play that piece. And then I do have another piece that I just caught yesterday. And it was every psychedelic mushroom explained in 11 minutes. And you can't resist that because there are a lot of pieces through history. There's a lot of art. JP Morgan has an art. He has a museum here in Hartford because he's from Hartford. And in there's an 1843 giant piece that's kind of hidden in the gallery, 1843 by Daniel McLeish. That's like all this midnight dream Shakespearean mushroom, like big mushroom symbology. So some of these dudes had a penchant for collecting the things that were protected by secret societies over thousands of years and kept from average people, because you do not have a right to communicate with your creator. You must pay the till and go to the man in the dress or something like that usually. So without further ado, we're going to go into the next block, and we are going to see part 1 of 9, DMT, the Spirit Molecule, Chapel of Sacred Mirrors, premiere 2010. And I mounted a camera to the hood of my Jeep to drive up the driveway, and I organized this little animation at the beginning with Terrence McKenna's voice. You'll see it. But this is early filmmaking work of Richard Grove in juxtaposition to field and academic studies of the psychedelic and entheogenic variety.
Okay, really quickly, I'm popping off before that shows. I'll watch it later. That sounds awesome. And I'm not going to focus on your mistakes, Rich, because you do so much right. So I'm sure it's amazing. Everybody, good night.
I will extend you the courtesy likewise, sir. Thank you. Yeah. And may I have another?
You're brilliant and everyone loves you. There you go. You're good for the night. Scott, you're going to have to give him more compliments after this.
No, that's an Animal House callback, but I appreciate you're too young to get it. That's cool. Go watch Animal House and you'll laugh your ass off while you're playing with the puppet.
Okay, cool. That might be too many things at one time, but conspiracysyndicate.com and AM Wake Ups is Wednesday on Rumble. Thanks for having me back on.
Right on.
Love to everyone. Have a good night, guys.
Yep. Shout out to Ryan and Steve. I've dealt with a variety of fears over the years by facilitating a growth mindset and an anti-fragile mentality. I've learned from mistakes that you haven't even conceived of yet. Now, I can't do it for you, but I can share the resources, the methods, the tools, and inspiration for you to learn how to do it for yourself. And it really is worth learning how to do for yourself because it's a lifelong beneficial skill. It's evergreen. It's never going to tarnish. You're always going to use this. If you're interested in learning more, I host a podcast every Sunday night. We analyze the week's news and help you have non-contradictory views you actually understand, but you've got to come along for the ride and process the news with us so you have that understanding. I also teach adults twice a year in a 12-week course called Autonomy that is aimed at resolving all the problems I just pointed out with the school system and the irrational fears and the replacement of the rites of passage and the methods you need to have a skeleton key in life and a Swiss Army knife so you can have the tools and the access to do whatever you need to do in this world to bring your goals, to bring your dreams and map them to a truthful reality. It is a simple process, but it is not for those who cling to their irrational fears. So I hope if we have lowered the barrier to entry today, if you see a future you that is more realistic and in detail and something you want to strive toward, I recommend you go to getautonomy.info. Check out the offer as far as what we do for people. I want you to know it applies to you. You can learn it. I can teach it. So I want to thank you all for your time and attention. Peace. Who's going to be first off the mute this morning?
I'm glad that I have this course now more than ever. Having a community of people to discuss how to be empowered and autonomous is really necessary and also therapeutic. I'm this much scared about the virus and a lot scared of what's coming down the pipe as a result.
All right, so first off, we're going to get you away from that fear and that stress that I'm sensing. And I want to get you into the practicality of exercising the conversations you're going to need to have.
Have you found that your skills aren't matching up with the challenges ahead? Here are 19 essential skills for success that school never taught you. Get your free copy by following the link below or visit getautonomy.info/19skills.